Let's see. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Cari Sparks with Pioneer Title, your Arizona title gal. I can reach at 602-715-5704. Yesterday, Zoom was having some issues, and so due to technical difficulties, which is a commonplace nowadays, Brian and I, for Ask the Underwriter, needed to move to Wednesday. So usually Brian joins me every Wednesday with, it's almost like deep thoughts with the underwriter, what's going on. So Brian, do you want to introduce yourself and give your contact information, please?
Sure. My name is Brian Reeve. I'm with Barrett Financial here in Gilbert, Arizona. NMLS number is 694300. Phone number is 602-741-4801.
I just wanted to let everyone know that if you're a real estate agent and you want to get involved with my home tours that are going to be launching, I'm super excited to have a website that's going to be coming out. It's going to be filled with all kinds of tools, as well as a really neat home tour option. And maybe with things going as fast as they are in our industry, in our particular market, you think that there's not an option needed for that, but truly there still seems to be a space in the in marketing to getting homes on home tours. And yesterday we had planned on talking about how values are really continuing to rise quite quickly. And I was mentioning to Brian that even in my own neighborhood, we've seen not just a bump in price, but a very unexpected rise. And seeing a house that's going on the market, even in my own neighborhood, that we would have guessed would be on the market for quite a bit less. But then again, I'm not a realtor. As well as another one that's in the neighborhood that's going on the market. Well, it's on the market, it's contingent already, because in Gilbert, whereas I pretty much live, things go within hours. And actually last week, when one of the two houses was going on the market, that day that it was going live, there were people in the front of the house and jamming up the road here on the street that I live on. So it's hard to even get in and out of the neighborhood as they swarmed over the top of a house. So, I mean, when
Crazy.
people think that it's not hot, or they can get a deal still, or they might be able to go under asking price, we're not seeing it. So at least in Gilbert and most of the Southeast Valley, they're just not seeing it. What Brian was going to talk to today is, talking about buyers that are, scared to buy, people who want to list their house being scared to list. Are we going toward another bubble? And how are these appraised values figuring into everything when we've got cash buyers coming in from major metropolitan areas into all of Arizona, quite frankly, with cash and no appraisals and things like that. I mean, just take it from there, Brian. That was a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's a lot to think about.
This is a tough subject because it's, being in the field of 05 and 06, seeing all these values increase and go through the roof were indicative of the type of mortgage products we had. We had the Altays, the Fast and Easies, we had the Ninas, the Sivas, the Cisas. We had basically every documentation that you could think about and not restricted to a certain amount of properties. So what was happening is you had the average buyer that was just buying and buying and buying and buying new builds. And the major influx on that is people were actually literally flipping the properties before they even made a first mortgage payment. You'd have somebody go in and buy 5 or 6 houses in a new construction. Values are increasing. Each house has $40,000, $50,000 equity in it. And before they make their first mortgage payment, they sell all 5, and yet they're making $300,000, $400,000 without even making a mortgage payment. So back then it was a little bit different than right now, actually a lot different than right now. But right now it's definitely a seller's market. So I'm seeing some very creative financing and negotiation taking place out there between real estate agents and buyers because of the pandemonium and not being able to get into a property. So we're having pretty much realtors out there accepting or wanting to accept cash only offers, or 20% or 30% down conventional offers, and also appraisal waivers, right? So we ask ourselves, how can we get an appraisal waiver? Like, why are we waiving an appraisal? Sometimes the realtor doesn't, or who's negotiating it, it becomes tribal knowledge. Everybody's talking about, oh, appraisal waiver, but they don't know what goes into that to get an appraisal waiver. And you can still utilize an appraisal waiver even if an appraisal is done. That just basically states that we're not going to be held to reducing the sales price for, low value. And we're also seeing that people are putting in offers over a certain amount of the appraised value. So there's never 2-1 situation. Everybody's kind of negotiating the way that they can get the most money out of this. And this is one of the things that I have found that is kind of trying to kind of trick the system, if you will. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac can kind of independently determine values based on certain criteria and what we call as UCDPs. And if there's enough equity in the property, then typically Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac will issue a property inspection waiver. So sometimes if a customer is putting 30% down and they run it through, and let's say that sales price is slightly over value, you technically, if you're putting enough money down, could possibly get a property inspection waiver if you're in a more positive position. So then what happens essentially is you can actually buy this house with a property inspection waiver, put that money down, and then what happens now that comp closes, it becomes a viable comp. So we have a lot of people doing a lot of different things. Like they are either not wanting to list their house until they get in contract. So we have that. We have people like, okay, let me get in contract, and then they're going to do a contingency. They're going to sell their house right away. Or we have people that are listing their house trying to find a home, but is requiring a leaseback option for at least 30 to 60 days because they're hoping to find a home. So that's just all the crazy stuff that we're starting to see is either, a leaseback option, or we're seeing, it's just crazy right now. And I know when the appraisers are going out there, the appraisers are seeing kind of what's going on, this competitive supply and demand thing. And they're trying to stay as conservative as possible. They're trying to keep their eye on the fact of what's happening in our market and what's driving the prices. So they're trying to look at more of realistic comparables instead of just that one comp that closed down the street on a cash offer because somebody absolutely fell in love with it and they cashed out on all their money in California on a house, came here and bought it cash, right? The other strategy that people are trying to go into this with is, see, whenever you acquire a property with 20% down and you get a loan on it, if you ever try to get that money back out of it, you have to wait pretty much to do a cash out refinance. You can only get out up to 80% of that amount, right? So if you put 20% down or 30% down and you try to do a cash out refinance later, you're only going to be able to get back that 10% equity to take you to pretty much the 80%. However, if you find a hard money lender that's not going to place a lien, or you find you cash out on your equity on your property in California, you can go and pay for cash on a home. And if it's a conventional, you can refinance in the first 6 months and basically recoup that money back as if it was basically a 5% down conventional purchase. So you're not limited to 80%. So a lot of people are just taking this cash just to solidify the house, lock it in hopes that, hey, the value is going to be there. They're still going to use the purchase price. So the value still needs to come in over the purchase price, but hoping in the next 6 months that they can refinance the house, pull out as much as they can because they acquire that house cash, and still technically achieve the same thing as a 5% down conventional offer. But they're cashing out on these houses in California. So it's just interesting to see all of the different variables that are happening. But definitely right now, because of the demand of the moving to Arizona, New York, California, you have all of these people moving here, that to them, it's not about, is the house worth it? This is a lot cheaper than where we're living right now. And if it's $20,000, $30,000 over what it's worth, we're going to pay it.
I was talking with some friends a while back, and they had a couple that they're acquainted of, and they're moving here from Illinois, from the Chicago area, and they didn't care what house they got. They just wanted a house. They wanted a place to land. And then once they got here, then they could slow down. They had the cash in hand so that they could go buy the other house that they truly wanted, or buy the time, because many of the new construction areas, their build out times now are so long that people are having to have a plan B because they're not going to get into that house. And when my husband and I were out looking for campers, because that's the new American way, is having a camper, there were people that came to look at the camper that we ended up buying, that the plan was that they would live in it. They were looking at campers as a house.
I believe it.
And so that it is a 12 months ago, even 8 months ago, this is not what we were seeing. We were in a really hot market for, as compared to other housing markets, but now it's just ridiculously on fire. And I watched the Cromford Report very closely. And by the way, if anyone's interested in attending one of the Cromford Report presentations, Pioneer Title is going to be hosting them once per month. And so I just need you to reach out to me, and I'll make sure you get the link to register for it, because it's very valuable information. As it looks at what is the state of housing in pretty much the Metro Phoenix market. But when Tina Tambor from the Cromford Report was giving our presentation last week, a balanced market would be the number 100. So that would mean that we're balanced between sellers and buyers. The number from last Tuesday, so just over a week ago, that number was 339 point something. So basically 340, completely unbalanced and unhealthy for the state of our market with housing supply. So it's a lot. So it's with you, Brian, it's like, okay, so what are we going to talk about next week? How on fire it is, or whatever. I mean, the topics are endless as to the new scenarios that we're seeing in this market.
The one big thing that I'm seeing right now is, and I see the need for people that are living in the Valley, is to set the benchmark. And what does that mean? Like in 2005, I was a wholesale mortgage manager for a large national bank. And I was located in Southern California, in South Central. And my office was in Long Beach. So my area covered everything pretty much from Long Beach all the way up to El Segundo. So basically LAX. So we had, Watts, Compton, Torrance, City of Carson, all of these areas in South Central Los Angeles. And you were seeing houses that were lower, affordable. But what happened is because of how hot the market was, the people that were not buying or did not own a house were pushed out because the house prices and the rentals got too high that they couldn't afford it anymore. The people that actually own the properties decided, we don't want to continue living here, and we can cash out and make all this money, and we can go move to the IE. We can go move to the Inland Empire. We can move to San Bernardino, Corona. We can move out to these areas, and we can get more house for less money and not be in those areas. So in Phoenix, we're going to see a lot of movement here and a lot of movement away.
True.
We're going to see people that either are not already owning, rental prices are going to get too high, or people are going to move to the outlying areas, Maricopa, Florence, those areas, just to stay affordable. So what's most important is, if you are a renter right now, you want to be able to get into a house if you can. I mean, it's super competitive and it's tough out there, but you want to get into a house right now because you set that benchmark. You don't have that landlord that's going to come to you in a year from now saying, I'm not going to renew your lease. In fact, it's going to go up $500 a month and we're giving it to somebody else, or this is what you're going to pay now. At least if you're in the house, you can take that equity that you're building in that house and transfer it onto a new property if you wanted to move up. So it's not about buying your dream home right now. It's about buying a home. If you can get into a home and build that equity, when you're ready to get that dream home, you transfer that equity. The problem is, if you're waiting to be qualified for that dream home, that dream's getting farther and farther and farther away from you because you're not building that transferable equity. You know, I bought my house, for instance, in a certain situation 5 years ago, and right now I would not consider even buying my house at the price point of what it's worth right now. But I can at least go to another house that may be a little bit more than what my house is currently and take all that equity and transfer it over, and I don't notice the hiccup. It's people that are sitting in the rental environment that this is hurting them big time. So we're going to see a lot of movement over the next year until inventory returns. Builders are starting to, you know, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, even it's very hard to even find specs right now with builders, even with all the building out that they're doing. It's just an interesting time. So I urge anybody that wants to get qualified, wants to get into a house, or wants to look at those options, right now is the time to do it.
Well, I agree with you. And final remarks before we go.
I don't think I have for it's just it's a crazy world out there right now, but we got to do whatever we can to try to get more folks into homes and try to get more people into home ownership. I mean, that is where the key is. The key is home ownership. Let's put money in our own pockets instead of other people's pockets, and let's do, you know, that's the ultimate goal. I mean, we all want to create some kind of, I don't want to say wealth, but we all want to create some kind of security or nest for our family and retirement for our family. And that's key, especially here in the Valley right now with the price values. I know some people are concerned about this falling off and going the other way around, but I don't think that this relocation from these states is going to slow.
I think it's going to actually speed up, is what I'm thinking. As the seasons change, we're going to have some other dynamics coming in. Arizona having a huge attraction for snowbirds. I'm keeping an eye on that part of the market to see, you know, can they afford to be a snowbird, and will they just decide to move here and make it their permanent residence? Right. That's an option. It's going to be an interesting fall to see as the snow starts to fly in my home state of Minnesota. What do they think? Is it time to go and be in the sun in the summertime? And granted, it is very warm still in September, but this too shall pass.
And one of the things that I'm thinking about here, and not to be a conspiracy theorist, right? But large corporations, before they move here, before they do anything, they're looking at this stuff way before the average consumer like us sees, right? We just start seeing this stuff pop up all over the place when they know plans for the Valley and all that is going on years in advance, right? And I just the other day I opened the news and I was like, there's a tremendous sports complex going in on Ellsworth and basically Pecos, which is going to be a 250-acre sports parks with like multiple baseball fields, multiple volleyball fields. Now, why would you have that much just in this part of the Valley unless you plan to bring a lot of people to this, or that would be a complete waste? You have these companies coming from Seattle, all these other places that are coming to the Phoenix area that are going to basically bring more jobs, more people, and people see, and corporations see the bigger picture.
Exactly. And I mentioned that I have these two houses on my block that still have for sale signs in the yard. Those people that were out there in the street that day, those were out-of-state license plates. So one of them parked underneath my tree in the front yard for quite a while, and it said Montana. So they're coming from all these places across the whole country. But as the snow starts to come into the picture on the weather, and as a Minnesotan or former Minnesotan, I know anything can happen after Labor Day. It's going to be an interesting ride this winter, but can you give your contact information again, Brian?
Absolutely. It's Brian Reeve, Cari Financial. My number is 602-741-1400. 4801.
And I'm Cari Sparks with Pioneer Title, your Arizona title gal. Lots of exciting things are going to come up this month on Facebook, and as well as over on my other social media channels and the launch of my website. So stay tuned for a lot of that stuff, and it's all being put together to help you, either the consumer or of course my wonderful customers. I want to help you become even better at what you do with more tools and resources always to draw from. So I appreciate your time this afternoon. Have a wonderful evening, and Brian and I will be back with Ask the Underwriter next week. Have a good one.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you, Cari.
Thanks. Bye-bye.